The line at Riverside Coffee snaked past the door, steam and chatter floating into the crisp Saturday air of Brookhaven, a leafy suburb just north of Atlanta. Maya Brooks, dark curls tucked beneath a navy beanie, inched forward with a patience learned from 1,000 stakeouts. She checked her watch, then the reflection in the glass, hoodie, jeans, running shoes. Nothing about her said federal agent. That was the point. Her team's undercover meet would happen tonight. Until then, she was just another woman grabbing a latte before a run along Peachtree Creek. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Jay. "You got this. Keep it small, safe, fast." Maya smiled. Aunt Jay wasn't family. It was Special Agent in Charge Janet Wilder, shepherding an operation that had taken months to set. Tonight's goal was a quiet one. Intercept a gun shipment before it vanished into a pipeline that fed street crews across the southeast. No arrests tonight, just eyes, ears, and confirmation. The delicate kind of work that required everyone to stay invisible. She paid, stepped out with her drink, and breathed the morning in. Joggers breezed past. A dad hoisted a toddler onto his shoulders. Normal life. The life she fought for. A blue and white cruiser rolled slow at the corner, then stopped with a short, sharp chirp of its siren. Maya barely glanced up as she popped her trunk and set the coffee in the cup holder, sliding in behind the wheel of her gray Accord. She was 2 blocks away when the same cruiser slipped behind her. Another chirp. Lights. She signaled and pulled to the curb near a small brick church where a food pantry line was already forming. Her hands were on the wheel before the officer reached the window. "Morning," she said, voice steady. The cop leaned down. He was tall, pale, jaw squared like a cinder block. His nameplate read K. Burris. "License and registration." "May I ask what this is about, officer?" "Your left taillight's out." He didn't look at the lights. He looked at her, past her, into the back seat. "Where are you headed in such a hurry?" "I'm not in a hurry." She offered a small, practiced smile. "Going to the park." "License. Registration." Maya reached for the glove box slowly, keeping one hand high and visible. "I'm going to open the glove compartment now." Burris's mouth twitched. Irritation, or maybe spite. "Just don't make any sudden moves." She passed him the documents. He held them without looking, his gaze still roving over the interior like a miner searching shale for a sparkle. Another cruiser nosed up behind his. 2 officers this time? For a busted taillight? "Step out of the car," he said. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. She had options. She could identify herself, end this in a sentence. But her training caught her first. Always evaluate. What's the least escalatory path? Her badge would set off alarms she couldn't unsound, complicate every quiet thing scheduled for tonight. But so could a body camera clip of her defying orders, even if they were unlawful. The calculus thrummed in her chest. "Officer," she said, the calm never leaving her tone, "I'm complying. Could you tell me why you need me outside the vehicle?" Burris's eyes hardened. "Because I said so." A second officer approached, young, black, nervous. His nameplate read Lopez. He didn't look at her. He watched Burris. Something in his jaw said he didn't like where this was headed and didn't know how to stop it. "Step out," Burris repeated, hand drifting toward his holster in a gesture that seemed casual and wasn't. Maya exhaled slowly, then opened the door and stepped onto the curb, hands visible, posture neutral. "Turn around," Burris said, hands on the hood. "For a traffic stop?" she asked, still measured, still careful. "I haven't been told I'm under arrest." Burris smiled, a thin, unpleasant thing. "You're not under arrest. Yet." A small crowd formed. People from the pantry line, a pair of teens with phones half raised, a grandmother with a church hat, and a look that said she'd seen this scene one too many times. The grandmother's voice cut through the morning. "Child, be still. Let the Lord handle fools." Maya placed her palms on the hood. The metal was cold beneath her skin. Burris patted her pockets with the care of a man checking produce at a market, rough without cause. "What's this?" He tapped her left hip where the faint outline of a phone and a slim leather wallet pressed through fabric. "My phone, my—" She stopped herself. "Not yet. Don't say it yet." "Spread your feet," he ordered. "Wider." "Officer," Lopez said, his voice low, uneasy. "We can write the equipment ticket and let her go. There's no—" Burris shot him a look that froze the words in Lopez's throat. "You got something to say, rookie? Say it after you learn how not to get yourself killed on stops." Maya kept her eyes on the rippled reflection of sky in the cruiser's windshield. She felt her pulse in her wrists, steady and strong. She could end this with a name and a number, but if Burris decided to escalate, even after the reveal, she could lose the night's operation and hand her team's enemies a gift wrapped in outrage. Burris snapped a cuff around her right wrist. The sound cracked the air like a twig underfoot. Gasps went up from the sidewalk. One of the teens' phones rose higher. "Hands behind your back," Burris said. "Officer," Maya replied, no tremor in her voice, "this is an unlawful detention. I am not resisting. I am not a threat. I am requesting a supervisor on scene." Burris yanked her left arm back and closed the second cuff with a bite that made her jaw clench. "Here's your supervisor," he said, chin jutting toward his own chest like a dare. The grandmother stepped closer, fury replacing fear. "Shame on you," she hissed. "Out here bullying women like it's sport." "Ma'am, step back," Lopez said, gentler than the words sounded. His eyes met Maya's for a split second. Apology, fear, a question he couldn't ask. A church bell tolled the quarter hour. Somewhere a dog barked. A MARTA bus sighed to a stop and people stared out the high windows at a scene they'd seen too often. Maya made her choice. "Officer Burris," she said, each syllable crisp as a cut diamond, "my name is Maya Brooks. My identification is in the black leather wallet in my left pocket. You will take it out with your right hand. You will hold it with the front facing your body camera. Then you will read the words out loud." Burris snorted. "Lady, you got nerve for—" "Do it," she said, and something in the way she said it, unyielding, professional, a cadence that didn't come from street life, made even Lopez straighten. Burris hesitated, then reached into her pocket, tugging free the slim wallet. He flipped it open dismissively and froze. The gold seal flashed even in the weak winter sun. The embossed eagle, the blue field, the photo, the words impossible to misread. Lopez leaned closer involuntarily. His mouth fell open. "Oh!" A murmur rolled through the onlookers like wind through grass. Burris's face drained of color. His jaw opened, closed, opened again. For a heartbeat too long, he didn't speak. Then training, or panic, forced the words out. "Special Agent Maya Brooks, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Phones rose higher. The teen's eyes went wide. The grandmother's laughter came out like a hallelujah. Maya lifted her cuffed hands slightly, the steel glinting. Her voice stayed calm, colder now. "You will remove these. Then you will call your watch commander. And then you will step back." For a second, he didn't move. Then the key scraped into the lock. A tiny click. Another, metal parting from skin. She brought her arms forward, rubbing warmth into the places the cuffs had bitten. Burris swallowed. "Ma'am, Supervisor," she repeated. Lopez fumbled for his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 12 requesting supervisor at Peachtree and 8th. Priority." The crowd had grown. The bus riders had come down to the sidewalk, cameras everywhere. Maya slid her badge and ID back into the wallet, then into her pocket and turned, not to the cops, not to the lenses, but to the church steps, where the grandmother watched with quiet fire. "Thank you for standing with me," Maya said. "Baby," the woman replied, voice fierce with love and rage, "we've been standing a long time." Sirens wailed from somewhere close. Maya's phone buzzed again in her pocket. Aunt Jay, no doubt, having just watched her agent blow her cover on a curb in Brookhaven. The operation would have to adapt. So would she. Maya squared her shoulders as a sergeant's SUV skidded to the curb. The morning had just changed, from quiet to loud, from invisible to undeniable. If the city wanted a scene, it had one. And if the department wanted to learn something about power, professionalism, and the line between them, Maya Brooks was suddenly the teacher assigned to the class. The sergeant's SUV screeched to a halt at the curb, tires spraying water across the church steps. A stocky man in his 50s stepped out, cap low, raincoat flapping in the winter wind. Sergeant Donnelly was an old hand, the kind of cop who'd seen both the best and the worst of his department. He took one look at Maya, the cuffs dangling from Burris's belt and the ring of cell phones aimed like spotlights, and groaned under his breath. "What the hell's going on here?" he barked, voice carrying across the sidewalk. Lopez stepped forward first, nervously tugging at his vest. "Traffic stop, Sarge," Officer Burris said. "Quiet, Lopez." Donnelly's eyes landed on Burris, then slid to Maya. She stood tall, badge still gleaming in her hand. The crowd leaned forward, straining to hear. Maya's tone was cool, precise. "Sergeant Donnelly, I identified myself after Officer Burris placed me in handcuffs without probable cause. My badge was in plain view when he retrieved my ID. Donnelly's jaw worked, a muscle twitching. He knew exactly how many lenses were recording every second. Officer Burris, is that true? Burris stammered, face flushed. She was being evasive, sir. Wouldn't answer my questions directly. You thought wrong, Donnelly snapped. The crowd murmured approval. The grandmother on the church steps crossed her arms, her voice sharp as glass. About time somebody told him. Maya slipped her badge back into her pocket, shoulders squared. Sergeant, I expect a full report filed with your watch commander, and I expect a copy of that body cam footage preserved. If it goes missing, I will personally request an internal investigation. Donnelly nodded stiffly. He wasn't used to civilians or agents talking to him like that, but he also wasn't about to push his luck on camera. It'll be logged, ma'am. You have my word. Lopez's relief showed in his posture, though his eyes were haunted. Burris shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing the sidewalk would swallow him whole. Amanda Torres from Channel 7 had arrived, microphone in hand, cameraman in tow. She called out over the hum of voices. Special Agent Brooks, can you comment on what just happened here? Maya turned her gaze on her, measured. No comment at this time. This matter will be addressed through official channels. Amanda pressed. But you are confirming you're an FBI agent? Yes, Maya said simply, then pivoted away, heading for her car. She could feel the crowd parting around her, phone still raised, voices buzzing. The grandmother called after her. You stay safe, baby girl. Maya raised a hand in acknowledgement without looking back. Inside her Accord, she closed the door and sat in the quiet, her pulse still loud in her ears. Her phone buzzed. Aunt Jay's name filled the screen. She answered. Yeah, I know, it blew up. Janet Wilder's voice was calm, clipped. It's already on half a dozen feeds. You'll be trending by noon. Get back to the field office, now. Maya exhaled, resting her head briefly against the wheel. What about tonight's op? Operational control has shifted. We'll regroup. Just move. The line clicked dead. As she pulled away from the curb, Lopez's figure lingered in her rearview mirror. He stood apart from Burris, hands on his hips, looking after her with something like shame, maybe even respect. She filed it away. Sometimes the smallest cracks let in the most light. By the time she reached the Atlanta field office, her face was already splashed across local news sites. FBI agent handcuffed by Brookhaven police. The clips replayed endlessly. Her calm commands, Burris's stutter, the golden badge flashing in the gray light. Inside the office, Wilder met her at the elevator. Tall, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who never needed to raise her voice to fill a room. She motioned Maya into the briefing room where two other agents waited. Sit, Wilder ordered. Maya obeyed. Wilder clicked a remote. The wall screen filled with split-screen footage. Maya on the curb, Burris fumbling, the crowd's gasp when the badge appeared. This bust, Wilder said, is already in D.C. It will not vanish. We cannot bury it. So we're going to ride it. Maya frowned. Ride it? This compromises tonight. The gun runners will know the feds are sniffing. Correct, Wilder replied. But it also hands us leverage. Public outrage means pressure. Pressure means cooperation. Brookhaven PD will either work with us or bleed for it in headlines. You gave us that. Maya leaned back, conflicted. I didn't want to give anyone a show. I just wanted to stop a bad cop from humiliating me in front of half a block. And you did, Wilder said firmly. You stayed calm, you stayed professional, and you exposed exactly what we've been warning them about. Now, let's use it. Meanwhile, across town, Burris sat in the locker room, staring at his boots. The precinct buzzed with whispers. Lopez lingered near the doorway, finally speaking. Why'd you push it, man? She wasn't hostile. You knew something was off. Burris glared. Don't lecture me, rookie. Lopez shook his head. You didn't just embarrass yourself, you embarrassed all of us. And she handled it better than you ever could. Burris's fists clenched, but his words stuck in his throat. For the first time, doubt crept in. Not about Maya, but about himself. That night, social media exploded. Clips of Maya's calm reveal racked up millions of views. Hashtags trended, #badge in the face, #respect, her, #Brookhaven, stop. Some posts were celebratory. She schooled him without raising her voice. Others were furious. How many don't have a badge to protect them? Maya scrolled through briefly, then turned off her phone. The attention wasn't what mattered. What mattered was what came next. Because if tonight proved anything, it was this. The city had seen a glimpse of power abused and power restrained. And in that space between, justice had a chance to breathe. Morning in Brookhaven brought a storm of headlines. Every local paper carried the same image. Officer Burris's stunned face frozen beside the gleam of Maya Brooks's FBI badge. By noon, it wasn't just Brookhaven, it was Atlanta, New York, even D.C. National anchors debated the footage while hashtags burned across Twitter. At the precinct, Chief Rawlings slammed the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution onto the conference table. "You know what this is?" he barked at the room of captains and lieutenants. "It's humiliation in print, in pixels, in every damn living room in the country, and it's on us." Murmurs filled the room. Burris sat stiff-backed in the corner, jaw tight. His supervisor, Sergeant Donnelly, stood near the front, sweat beading on his temples. Rawlings's gaze swept the room. "The FBI called me personally. They want cooperation. They want accountability. And I want every officer in this department to understand. Whatever happened at that stop, it will not happen again. Not on my watch." He fixed his eyes on Burris. "Internal Affairs is opening an inquiry. Effective immediately, you're on administrative leave." Burris surged to his feet. "With respect, Chief." "Sit down, Burris," Rawlings snapped. "Respect is exactly what you're lacking." Across town, Maya sat in a quiet office at the FBI Field Division, sipping black coffee as emails flooded in. Supportive messages from other agents, formal requests for statements, and a summons to brief DC leadership later in the week. Alicia Chen, her partner, leaned against the doorway. "You're famous," she teased, though her eyes betrayed concern. "Infamous, maybe," Maya replied. She closed her laptop. "This isn't what I wanted." "No one wants it," Alicia said softly. "But maybe it's what we needed. People are paying attention now. They saw how you handled him, with control, with restraint. It's not just about you. It's about every woman who didn't have a badge to flash." Maya exhaled, rubbing her temples. "And in the middle of all that, our op got blown to hell." "Ops can be rebuilt," Alicia said. "Reputations? Those change slower, unless moments like this force it." By midday, protesters had gathered outside the Brookhaven precinct. Some carried signs that read, "Respect us like agents." Others chanted Maya's name. News vans lined the street, reporters jostling for sound bites. Inside, Lopez watched from the window, unease in his chest. He replayed the stop over and over. Maya's calm voice, Burris's heavy hand. The crowd's gasp when the badge appeared. He hadn't stopped it. He hadn't spoken up soon enough. "Lopez!" Donnelly called, pulling him aside. "IA's going to want your statement. Tell the truth. Nothing more, nothing less." "Yes, Sarge," Lopez said, though his stomach twisted. The truth would damn Burris, and maybe damn him too, for silence. Meanwhile, Burris stewed at home, blinds drawn, phone buzzing with texts from colleagues, some supportive, others scathing. He turned on the TV only to see his own scowl replayed again and again. "This isn't over," he muttered to himself. "She thinks she's untouchable, but the Bureau can't save her forever." His wife, perched tensely on the edge of the couch, whispered, "Ken, maybe this is the universe telling you something. Maybe it's time." "Time for what? To roll over? To let them ruin me?" His voice cracked with fury. "I did my job." But even as he spoke, the words sounded hollow. At the FBI office, Wilder gathered Maya and Alicia for a closed-door briefing. "The Bureau wants to leverage this moment. Public trust is at stake. We're assigning you liaison duty with Brookhaven PD." Maya blinked. "Liaison? With them? After what just happened?" "Yes," Wilder said firmly, "because the optics demand it. You'll walk back into that precinct and show them what accountability looks like. You'll remind them the Bureau isn't their enemy, but neither are the people they swore to serve." Alicia's eyebrows shot up. "You're sending her into the lion's den." Wilder's tone was steel. "Then she'll show the lions who runs the den." That evening, Maya returned to Brookhaven. Cameras swarmed the entrance, reporters shouting as she strode past, chin high, FBI badge clipped prominently to her belt. Inside, the precinct was hushed. Officers stared as she walked down the hall toward Chief Rawlings's office. Lopez caught her eye as she passed. He gave a small nod, respectful, almost apologetic. Maya nodded back, expression unreadable. In Rawlings's office, the chief rose to greet her. "Agent Brooks, thank you for coming." Maya's voice was calm, precise. "Let's be clear, Chief. I didn't come for thanks. I came because your officer put me in handcuffs for the crime of existing. That stops now." Rawlings met her gaze, unflinching. "Agreed. Which is why I want your help to make sure it does." The room fell into silence, thick with the weight of what had begun. That night, the news cycle played both sides of the story. A rogue cop humbled, a calm agent revealed, a city on edge. But in living rooms across America, one clip replayed again and again. Maya Brooks standing tall, voice steady, as she demanded accountability. For many, it was more than a viral moment. It was proof that dignity could confront cruelty and win. And for Maya, it was only the beginning. The next morning, Brookhaven City Hall buzzed like a disturbed hive. Reporters filled the marble steps, microphones and cameras angled toward a podium draped with the city seal. The mayor had called a press conference, flanked by the police chief and, unexpectedly, Special Agent Maya Brooks. Inside the anteroom, Maya stood with arms folded, her badge clipped openly at her hip. Chief Rawlings adjusted his tie for the 5th time, sweat glistening under the collar. "I want to make this clear, Agent Brooks," he said. "This isn't about throwing anyone under the bus. We need unity. Unity without accountability is just silence," Maya replied, her voice cool. "Say what you need to say, but I'll say what's true." Rawlings grimaced but didn't argue. He knew the cameras would roll whether he liked it or not. The door opened, and a staffer whispered, "We're live in 2. Outside, the crowd roared with anticipation. Protesters with signs, "Justice for all," "We believe Maya," stood shoulder to shoulder with counter-protesters chanting about law and order. Police barricades kept the two groups apart, but the tension pulsed like static in the air. Amanda Torres stood near the front with her cameraman, broadcasting live. This press conference could decide whether Brookhaven PD regains public trust or loses it entirely. At the center of it all is Agent Maya Brooks, the woman handcuffed during what should have been a routine stop. The mayor stepped up first. "Good morning. As you all know, recent events have shaken our community. We stand committed to transparency, accountability, and justice." Applause rippled from one side of the crowd, jeers from the other. Chief Rawlings followed, his voice measured but strained. "The actions of one officer do not reflect the values of this department. An internal investigation is underway. Officer Burris has been placed on administrative leave pending review. We will cooperate fully with federal authorities." Boos rose, drowning him out. Rawlings swallowed hard, then gestured stiffly toward Maya. "Special Agent Brooks has agreed to speak." Maya stepped forward and the noise shifted. Gasps, cheers, even silence. She scanned the crowd, her gaze steady, then leaned toward the microphones. "On Saturday morning, I was pulled over for a broken taillight. I complied with every order. I was polite, I was calm. And yet, I was handcuffed in front of a church, humiliated in front of a community, and treated like a suspect for nothing more than existing." A hush fell over the plaza. Phones rose higher. Cameras zoomed in. Maya continued, voice clear and firm. "I revealed my badge not to shame anyone, but to protect myself. I am alive, standing here today, because I had the privilege of carrying an FBI credential. But ask yourself, what happens to the woman who doesn't? To the man who can't? To the teenager whose only defense is his word?" The crowd erupted in applause and chants of her name. Protest signs waved high. She raised a hand for quiet. "This isn't about one officer and one stop. It's about a system where judgment too often comes before facts, where power is used as a weapon instead of a shield. Accountability isn't optional. It's the foundation of trust. And without trust, there is no community." Even Rawlings, standing behind her, bowed his head slightly as though conceding the point. In a living room across town, Lopez watched the broadcast, his jaw tight. His wife glanced over. "That's the woman from the stop?" He nodded. "She's saying what we all know but can't say in uniform." Meanwhile, Burris sat in his kitchen, fists clenched on the table, the TV's glow painting his face pale. Neighbors outside whispered, pointing toward his house. The badge reveal played on a loop. His career, his authority, his identity, it was all crumbling. After the press conference, reporters swarmed Maya with questions. "Agent Brooks, are you pressing charges?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "This isn't about me versus one man. This is about reform versus denial, and I will cooperate fully to make sure the truth is heard." Amanda Torres pushed closer, mic extended. "Do you believe Brookhaven PD can change?" Maya met her gaze. "Change isn't a belief, it's a choice, and the people of this city will decide if their leaders make it." The crowd thundered in response, drowning out further questions. Later that afternoon, Wilder debriefed Maya back at the field office. "You just lit a fire under this city. Half the country's watching, and the other half will by tomorrow." Maya exhaled, weary. "That wasn't the plan. I didn't want the spotlight." "Spotlight's here whether you wanted it or not," Wilder said, "so use it. Every camera pointed at you is one less pointed at someone who can't defend themselves." By evening, national anchors replayed her speech. Commentators debated police reform. Hashtags surged. And for the first time in years, Brookhaven wasn't just another suburb. It was a symbol. At home, the grandmother from the church steps smiled at her TV, murmuring, "That's how you fight without swinging a fist." And in her quiet apartment, Maya finally allowed herself a breath. The battle had only begun, but for once, truth had carried the day. The Brookhaven precinct felt different after the press conference. The usual hum of chatter and laughter in the squad room had thinned into whispers. Officers walked in clusters, conversations cutting off when certain names were mentioned. On nearly every monitor, the clip of Maya's calm words at the podium played on repeat, her face impossible to avoid. Lopez sat at his desk, staring at a blank incident report form. He'd been called to give his official statement to Internal Affairs in less than an hour. His palms sweated against the cheap ballpoint pen. He could write the truth. That Burris escalated without cause. That Maya complied. That the cuffs snapped shut before anyone could explain. But writing the truth meant breaking the unspoken shield. The brotherhood of silence that had protected officers for decades. Sergeant Donnelly stopped by, hand heavy on Lopez's shoulder. "You ready?" Lopez forced a nod. "Yeah, just finishing the draft." "Keep it straight," Donnelly said. His tone was neutral, but his eyes carried a warning. "Don't sink the ship." Lopez looked back at the form. Straight, he thought, or honest. Across town, Burris slammed a beer onto his kitchen table. The local evening news showed his face again, his name plastered in bold letters. His teenage son sat quietly at the counter, earbuds in, pretending not to watch his father unravel. "They're making me the villain," Burris muttered, "like I'm some monster who wakes up looking for trouble." He glanced at his son. "You believe that?" The boy hesitated. "Dad, maybe you went too far?" Burris's jaw clenched. "I did my job." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. His wife shifted uncomfortably in the kitchen doorway but said nothing. Silence had become the atmosphere of the house. Meanwhile, Maya sat in Wilder's office, the blinds drawn against the flood of media vans outside the field division. On the desk sat a stack of printouts, editorials, transcripts, social media analysis. "You're national now," Wilder said flatly. "Every outlet from CNN to Fox is running this. Half the country calls you a hero, the other half calls you a troublemaker, and DC is paying attention." Maya folded her hands, keeping her voice steady. "And the gun shipment?" "On hold," Wilder admitted. "Your cover's blown, at least locally. But Washington wants you on a different stage now. They've asked you to testify before a federal committee on policing practices." Maya's breath caught. "You mean politics, cameras, a circus?" Wilder leaned forward. "Yes, and sometimes that circus is where change starts. You didn't ask for this spotlight, Brooks, but it's here. Use it." That evening, Maya drove home under cover of dusk, ducking news vans parked near her building. She kept her hood up, moving quickly but still caught the eyes of neighbors who whispered and pointed. Inside, she dropped her bag and leaned against the door. Her phone buzzed with a flood of messages. Friends from college, fellow agents from Quantico, strangers across the country. One stuck out. A text from Lopez. "Agent Brooks, it's Lopez. IA interview tomorrow. I can't promise anything, but I'm tired of pretending. Thought you should know." Maya stared at the words. Small cracks in the shield were forming, and Lopez might be one of them. The next morning, Internal Affairs set up shop in a cramped conference room at the precinct. Lopez sat under fluorescent lights, two investigators across from him, recorders running. "Officer Lopez," one began, "walk us through the stop from the moment you arrived on scene." Lopez's throat tightened. He could feel Donnelly's presence in the hallway, pacing, waiting. He thought of Burris's glare, the Brotherhood code, but then he saw Maya's calm eyes in his memory, heard her steady voice asking for a supervisor, watched again the moment the crowd gasped at the badge. He cleared his throat. Officer Burris initiated the stop. The driver complied. She asked clear questions, moved slowly. There was no indication of threat. He paused, heart pounding. The decision to cuff her was unnecessary. It escalated the situation. I tried to intervene, but I didn't press hard enough. The investigators exchanged glances. One scribbled notes. So you're saying Officer Burris violated protocol? Lopez nodded once, firmly. Yes, he did. The words left his mouth like stones thrown through glass. Fragile silence shattered. News of Lopez's testimony leaked within hours. By evening, headlines screamed, Brookhaven officer breaks ranks, confirms FBI agent's account. At the precinct, Burris exploded. That rookie sold me out, he shouted in the locker room, fists pounding against a metal bench. Other officers avoided his gaze, some shaking their heads, others whispering. The shield had cracked, and once cracks formed, they spread. That night, Maya sat in her apartment, TV muted as she read Lopez's leaked statement online. Relief mixed with sorrow. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about a department forced to reckon with itself. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call from D.C. A congressional staffer's voice came through, crisp and direct. Agent Brooks, the committee would like you in Washington next week. Prepare your remarks. The nation will be listening. Maya set the phone down slowly, staring out the window at the city lights. The fight had begun on a sidewalk, but now it was heading to the halls of power. And she knew. Silence was no longer an option. The corridors of Brookhaven Precinct buzzed with tension. Ever since Lopez's testimony leaked, the atmosphere had shifted. Some officers avoided him entirely, whispering behind his back. Others quietly slipped him nods of respect when no one was looking. The shield that once seemed unbreakable was fracturing, and everyone knew it. Lopez sat alone in the break room, nursing lukewarm coffee. His phone lit up with a message from his wife. Proud of you. Don't let them scare you. He smiled faintly, but glanced at the door. Fear lingered in his chest. Not fear of Burris, but of isolation. He had chosen honesty over loyalty, and now the walls felt colder. Outside the precinct, protesters grew louder each day. Justice for Maya, they chanted, their voices echoing down Main Street. News vans lined the block, eager to capture every confrontation, every chant, every tear. Brookhaven wasn't just a town anymore. It was a symbol. Across the city, Burris prepared for his own defense. He sat in his lawyer's office, tie loosened, face hard. They're crucifying me, Burris growled. That rookie's testimony, those videos, it's a setup. His attorney, a sharp-suited man named Richards, leaned back. Ken, perception is killing you. You look like the face of everything wrong with policing. If you want a chance, you need to change the narrative. What narrative? Burris snapped. She baited me, played me. She wanted this to blow up. Richards's eyebrow rose. You're accusing a federal agent of staging her own humiliation? That won't fly in court or the press. We need sympathy. Humanize you, family man, years of service, a mistake, not malice. Burris's jaw clenched. He wanted to lash out, but the word mistake clung to him. It wasn't the word he used for himself, but maybe it was the only lifeline left. Meanwhile, at the FBI Field Division, Maya sat with Alicia Chen reviewing briefings. A stack of papers lay between them. Transcripts of Lopez's testimony, news articles, and preparation notes for her upcoming appearance before Congress. You know they'll try to discredit you, Alicia warned. They'll bring up every case you've worked, every decision you've made. They'll paint you as emotional, biased, even vindictive. Maya leaned back, exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. I didn't ask for any of this, Alicia. I wanted to stop a gun shipment. Now I'm the face of police accountability. Sometimes we don't get to choose the battles, Alicia said softly, but you do get to choose how you fight them. Maya nodded, though her stomach churned. She had faced drug lords and arms dealers, but the thought of facing a panel of politicians and cameras was a different kind of battlefield. That night, Maya walked to her car under the orange glow of a street lamp. She noticed a slip of paper tucked under her windshield wiper. Pulling it free, she unfolded the note. Agent Brooks, we see you. Keep going. Her eyes scanned the lot, but it was empty. She couldn't tell if the note came from a supporter or a warning. Folding it into her pocket, she slid behind the wheel, hyper-aware of every shadow on her drive home. At Burris's house, the mood was collapsing. His wife spoke in hushed tones, afraid of neighbors. His son barely looked at him. The TV replayed Maya's speech at City Hall, her calm words cutting through the static. Burris shut it off violently, but the silence that followed was worse. The phone rang. It was Richards again. "Ken, the department's IA board meets tomorrow. They'll likely recommend termination. You need to be ready." Burris pressed the phone to his ear, knuckles white. "They can't end me like this." "They can," Richards said grimly. "Unless you fight smart, no rants, no rage, just remorse. It's your only card left." The next morning, Lopez faced his own fallout. In the locker room, 2 veteran officers cornered him. "You think you're a hero?" one sneered. "Snitching on your partner? Selling us out to the feds?" Lopez's pulse quickened, but he held his ground. "I told the truth, that's all." The other officer spat near his boots. "Truth don't keep us alive on the streets, loyalty does." Before it could escalate, Donnelly walked in, barking, "Enough! Out!" The veterans backed off reluctantly, grumbling. As they left, Donnelly turned to Lopez. "You did the right thing. Don't forget it, even when it feels like hell." Lopez nodded, though his heart pounded. Doing the right thing had never felt lonelier. Later that day, Maya received her official summons. Testify before the House Committee on Oversight in Washington, D.C. The date was set for 1 week. Her stomach tightened as she read the words. She looked out her office window, the skyline glowing in the late afternoon sun. She thought of Lopez risking his career, of Burris clinging to his, of the grandmother who had stood on the church steps and shouted, "Shame on you!" The fight had started on a curb in Brookhaven, but it was about to reach the nation's capital. And Maya knew she couldn't flinch now. The plane hummed steadily as it cut through the clouds. Maya sat by the window, arms folded, watching the sun bleed across the horizon. Her badge and gun were secured in her bag under the seat, but tonight they felt heavier than usual. She wasn't flying as an agent on assignment. She was flying as a witness, a symbol, a target of scrutiny. Across the aisle, Alicia scrolled through briefing documents, underlining key points with a blue pen. "They'll try to spin it, Maya. Some will paint you as a hero. Others will call you a disruptor. You can't control that. What you can control is your truth." Maya glanced at her. The truth hasn't always been enough. "Maybe not," Alicia said, setting the papers down. "But sometimes it's the spark that lights everything else." Maya let the words settle as the plane dipped toward Reagan National. Meanwhile, back in Brookhaven, Burris paced his living room like a caged animal. News commentators dissected every second of the footage. His voice, his posture, the snap of the cuffs. His lawyer, Richards, sat calmly in an armchair, tablet balanced on his knees. "You're losing ground fast," Richards said bluntly. Lopez's testimony cracked the foundation. The FBI agent's speech turned the nation's eyes on you. You need to decide if you want to salvage what's left or burn it all down. Burris stopped pacing. "And what does salvaging look like?" "Contrition," Richards replied. "Public apology. Admit you overstepped. Position it as a lapse in judgment under stress. The public might forgive mistakes, but they won't forgive arrogance." Burris sneered. "You want me to beg? To bow to her?" Richards sighed. "I want you to survive this. If you keep raging, you're finished. Not just in uniform, but in life. Think about your son, your wife. They deserve better than your pride." Burris's shoulders sagged, but his eyes burned with resentment. Survival sounded like surrender. At the FBI field office in D.C., Wilder greeted Maya with a firm handshake. "You'll be under more pressure than you've ever known. Cameras everywhere. Every word dissected. But you've got this." Maya adjusted her blazer, trying to steady her pulse. "I don't want to be a headline, I just want to do my job." "You already did your job," Wilder said. "Now you show the country what that looked like. Calm, measured, professional. That's your strength." The next morning, the Capitol was alive with chaos. Protesters filled the plaza, some waving signs with Maya's face, others accusing her of fueling anti-police sentiment. Police officers in riot gear lined the steps, separating the factions. The air buzzed with chants, bullhorns, and the constant whir of news drones hovering overhead. Inside, the House Committee chamber was already packed. Lawmakers shuffled papers, aides whispered in corners, and cameras from every major network pointed at the witness table. Maya sat in the waiting room just outside, Alicia beside her, both silent. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lopez. Good luck today. Tell them the truth, for all of us. She typed back quickly. Thank you, stay safe. When the doors opened, Maya walked into the chamber, the room falling to a tense hush. She sat at the witness table, microphone angled toward her, the seal of the United States looming behind the committee chair. Chairwoman Reynolds, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, banged her gavel. This committee will come to order. Today, we examine the case of Agent Maya Brooks, who was wrongfully detained by Brookhaven Police. Agent Brooks, thank you for being here. Maya nodded slightly. Thank you for having me. The questions came quickly, some supportive, others pointed. Agent Brooks, walk us through what happened that morning, one congressman asked. Maya described the stop calmly. The flashing lights, Burris's abrupt tone, the snap of cuffs, the reveal of her badge. The room listened, silent except for the clicking of reporters' keyboards. Another congresswoman leaned forward. Agent Brooks, do you believe race played a role in how you were treated? Maya paused, the weight of the question heavy. Yes, she said finally. I believe my race and my gender influenced how Officer Burris saw me, and I believe that's not unique to me. It's a reality many Americans face every day without a badge to shield them. The chamber buzzed with murmurs. Cameras zoomed closer. Back in Brookhaven, Burris watched from his living room, fists balled on his knees. Maya's calm voice filled the room, replaying his every action in detail. His wife whispered, Ken, she's destroying you. No, Burris muttered. She's destroying herself. People will see she's politicizing this. But deep down, even he knew the tide was turning. Maya continued her testimony, refusing to flinch under scrutiny. When a congressman accused her of grandstanding, she met his gaze steadily. I didn't ask for this platform, she said, but I will not waste it. What happened to me should never happen to anyone. Accountability isn't anti-police, it's pro-justice. Applause erupted from the audience despite the chairwoman's gavel. Cameras flashed like lightning. In that moment, Maya wasn't just an FBI agent defending her dignity. She was a voice echoing for millions. When the session adjourned, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward, cameras blinding. Wilder and Alicia shielded her as they ushered her out the side door, but Maya caught the sight of protesters holding candles outside, chanting her name. She exhaled, shoulders heavy but heart steady. The fight was bigger than her now, and there was no going back. The morning after Maya's testimony, every major newspaper splashed her words across their front pages. Accountability isn't anti-police, it's pro-justice. Clips of her calm defiance dominated social media feeds, dissected by pundits and praised by activists. At Brookhaven Precinct, the mood was fractured. Some officers gathered around the break room TV, watching highlights of the congressional hearing with folded arms and clenched jaws. Others watched in silence, eyes betraying admiration they dared not voice. The line between loyalty and truth had never felt sharper. Lopez arrived for his shift to find his locker vandalized. "R.at" scrawled in black marker across the metal. His stomach sank, but he forced himself to scrub it off, jaw tight. He knew it wasn't about the word. It was about isolation. Sergeant Donnelly appeared behind him, arms crossed. "Ignore it," he said quietly. "You did the right thing." Lopez met his eyes. "Then why does it feel like I'm the one on trial?" Donnelly sighed. "Because you broke a code most of us never should have sworn to." Across town, Burris sat in a studio under the harsh glow of stage lights. His lawyer Richards had arranged the interview, a chance to reclaim control. The host, a cable news personality with a reputation for softball questions, leaned forward. "Officer Burris, America's seen the video. We've heard the FBI agent's testimony. What do you want people to know?" Burris clasped his hands, forcing a look of humility. "I want people to know I never meant harm. It was a high-stress situation and I made a mistake. We all do. I've served this community for 15 years. I've put my life on the line. One bad moment shouldn't erase that." The host nodded sympathetically. "Do you feel you've been treated unfairly?" Burris seized the opening. "Absolutely. The media painted me as a villain before the facts came out. I'm human. I was doing my job. I overreacted, but I'm not the monster they say I am." Richards, watching from behind the cameras, exhaled in relief. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than rage. But Maya saw the interview later that evening on her hotel TV. She sat on the edge of the bed, arms folded, jaw set. Burris's mistake rang hollow in her ears. Alicia knocked on the door, holding takeout. "Saw it?" Maya nodded. He's playing contrite, trying to rewrite it before the inquiry finishes. And it might work, Maya admitted reluctantly. People love a redemption arc, but an apology without accountability is just theater. Alicia set the food down. Then you make sure people see the difference. Back in Brookhaven, Lopez found himself summoned to internal affairs again. This time, the tone was sharper. Officer Lopez, one investigator said, "Are you aware your testimony has created significant disruption in your department?" Lopez's fists clenched in his lap. "With respect, sir, the disruption wasn't my words. It was the truth. If that shakes the department, maybe it needed shaking." The investigator scribbled notes, lips tight. "You realize this could impact your future here?" Lopez met his gaze steadily. "Maybe my future isn't supposed to be here." Meanwhile, Burris returned home from the studio to find protesters outside his house. Neighbors watched from porches as people chanted, "No justice, no peace." His son stood in the window, face pale. Burris slammed the door and drew the curtains. Richards called within minutes. "Ken, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Lay low. Don't engage." But Burris's pride simmered like acid. He didn't want to hide. He wanted to fight. In D.C., Maya prepared for another day of meetings with congressional aides. Wilder briefed her on the ripple effect. "Your testimony shook the tree. States are drafting proposals for independent review boards. Civil rights groups are rallying behind you. But the backlash is rising too. Be ready for smear campaigns." Maya exhaled. "They can smear me all they want. What matters is that the cameras caught the truth." Wilder gave her a rare smile. "Exactly. Keep holding steady." That night, Lopez drove home under flashing red and blue. A patrol car tailed him for 6 blocks before peeling off. His hands gripped the wheel tight, sweat prickling his neck. At home, his wife hugged him fiercely. "They're trying to scare you," she whispered. Lopez nodded, though his stomach twisted. "They might succeed if I let them, but I can't back down now." Meanwhile, Burris sat alone in his darkened living room, the glow of his failed interview replaying across social media with mocking captions. His phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, most venomous. He threw it onto the couch, head in his hands. For the first time, the weight of what he had done crashed down. Not just the handcuffs, not just the cameras, but the legacy. His son would remember him not as a hero, but as the man who humiliated an innocent woman and paid the price. And Burris realized, survival might require more than contrition. It might require surrender. In Washington, Maya looked out the window of her hotel, the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. She thought of Lopez risking his badge, Burris clinging to his pride, and the grandmother who'd shouted "shame on you" that morning outside the church. The fight was far from over, but with every step, the truth gained ground. And Maya knew she couldn't stop walking now. Brookhaven felt like a city holding its breath. Every night, the courthouse steps filled with protesters carrying candles, chanting for change. Every morning, the precinct doors opened to reporters hungry for scraps of information. Inside, the air was thick with suspicion. The thin blue line had split into factions, those who wanted to protect Burris at any cost, and those who saw in Maya's calm defiance a mirror held up to their own silence. Lopez walked the halls with his head high, but each step felt heavier. Colleagues he'd once called brothers now passed him without a word. In the cafeteria, conversations died when he sat down. One afternoon, he opened his locker to find a photo of a rat taped inside. He peeled it off quietly, folded it into his pocket, and went about his shift. Fear gnawed at him, but so did resolve. That evening, his wife urged him to transfer. "This isn't safe, Daniel. You've got 2 kids. Do you want them to grow up watching their father crushed for telling the truth?" Lopez looked at her, tired but firm. "If I back down now, what do I teach them? That silence is safer than honesty? That's not the world I want for them." Across town, Burris was unraveling. His staged apology tour had backfired. Social media cut his words into memes, mocking his claim of a momentary lapse. The precinct had turned him into a pariah, and protesters haunted his street. In a dim bar on the outskirts of town, he sat hunched over a glass, muttering to Richards. "You don't get it," Burris snapped. "They're not just after my job, they're after my life. My name, my family's future." Richards rubbed his temples. "Ken, the more you fight this publicly, the deeper you sink. The best option is cooperation. Take the inquiry, show remorse, maybe salvage your pension." Burris slammed the glass down. "Cooperation? With her? With the bureau that humiliated me?" His voice shook with rage. "No, I'll make my own move." Richard studied him carefully. "Don't do something you can't undo." But Burris's silence said everything. Meanwhile, in Washington, Maya was ushered into a private meeting with senior bureau officials. Wilder sat beside her, expression unreadable. Across the mahogany table, Deputy Director Simmons spoke in clipped tones. "Agent Brooks, your testimony ignited something bigger than any of us anticipated. Congressional leaders are drafting proposals for federal oversight of police misconduct. They want a task force, and they want you at the center of it." Maya's breath caught. "A task force?" Simmons nodded. "A joint initiative. Federal agents, state investigators, community leaders. You'd be the face." Maya leaned back, uneasy. "I'm still working cases. I didn't sign up to be a symbol." Wilder's voice was calm but firm. "Symbols move mountains when evidence alone doesn't. This isn't just about Brookhaven anymore. It's about setting precedent." Maya exhaled slowly. "And if I say no, then someone else takes the seat. Someone who may not fight as hard," Simmons replied. Maya closed her eyes briefly. She had joined the Bureau to chase criminals, not headlines. But now, history had pulled her into its current, and stepping out felt impossible. Back in Brookhaven, Lopez received a summons to the chief's office. Chief Rawlings stood by the window, blinds half drawn, cigarette smoke curling through the stale air. "Sit down, Lopez," Rawlings said. Lopez obeyed, posture rigid. Rawlings turned, eyes heavy. "You've put this department under a microscope. Some think you're brave. Most think you're reckless. I need to know where you stand. Are you with us or with her?" Lopez met his gaze. "With the truth, Chief? That's all." Rawlings studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Truth has a price. Make sure you're ready to pay it." That night, Burris acted on his impulse. He called a local radio host known for fanning outrage and demanded airtime. The host welcomed him eagerly, sensing ratings gold. Live on air, Burris railed against Maya. "She's not a victim, she's an opportunist. She used her badge to humiliate me, to advance some political agenda. And Lopez? He's no hero. He's a traitor to his brothers." The broadcast spread like wildfire, clips shared across social platforms. His words enraged protesters, who doubled their presence outside the precinct. But in corners of the internet, Burris found sympathy, a small but loud echo chamber fueling his defiance. At home, his wife stared at him in disbelief. "Ken, you're destroying what little chance you had left." But Burris only muttered, "Better destroyed than forgotten." Maya watched the broadcast from her hotel room, jaw tight. Alicia paced the room, furious. "He's painting you as the villain, twisting everything." Maya muted the TV. "Let him. Every word digs him deeper. The truth doesn't need my defense. It stands on its own." Still, the fire in her chest burned hot. She knew Burris wasn't finished. Desperation made dangerous men. The next morning, Lopez found protesters chanting his name outside his home. Some held signs that read, "Truth Teller" and "Thank you, Lopez." His children peeked through the blinds, wide-eyed. For the first time in weeks, Lopez smiled faintly. Maybe he wasn't as alone as he thought. As the week closed, 3 lives moved on diverging paths. Maya pulled toward Washington and the burden of leadership. Lopez standing at the edge of isolation and recognition. Burris spiraling into defiance and bitterness. And Brookhaven itself sat on the fault line, waiting for the next crack in the shield to widen into an earthquake. Washington's marble corridors echoed with hurried footsteps as Maya was ushered into another meeting on Capitol Hill. She had spent the last 48 hours shuttling between briefings, interviews, and strategy sessions. Her name was on every chyron, her face on every newsfeed. She barely recognized her own life. Inside the committee room, Chairwoman Reynolds greeted her with a firm handshake. "Agent Brooks, thank you again for your testimony. The country needs more voices like yours." Maya gave a polite nod, though her stomach twisted. She had been trained for undercover ops, not political theater. Yet here she was, offered the role of leading a new federal task force on policing accountability. The weight of it pressed on her shoulders heavier than any vest she'd worn. After the meeting, she sat on the Capitol steps, phone buzzing with missed calls. Wilder's voice replayed in her head. "Symbols move mountains." She hated the word, but maybe he was right. In Brookhaven, Lopez braced himself for another storm. An emergency meeting had been called by the department's union to decide his fate. He sat in the back of the hall, surrounded by men and women who once joked with him, who once trusted him with their lives. Now their eyes were cold, calculating. Union President Markson stood at the podium. Brothers and sisters, we've all seen the fallout from Officer Lopez's testimony. The question before us is simple. Does he still deserve our protection? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others crossed their arms. Lopez's heart pounded, but he stood when called to speak. "I didn't betray anyone," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "I told the truth. If that feels like betrayal, maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe the problem is what we're protecting." A few officers shifted uncomfortably, but most stayed silent. Markson banged the gavel. "Vote will be cast tomorrow." Lopez left the hall knowing the walls were closing in. Meanwhile, Burris could no longer stand the isolation. His neighbors avoided him, his wife barely spoke, and his son looked at him with something close to shame. He stewed in silence until rage bubbled over. Late that night, he drove aimlessly, the radio replaying clips of Maya's congressional testimony. Her voice, calm, measured, firm, gnawed at him. In a fit of fury, he pulled over, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. "She thinks she won," he muttered. "But she hasn't faced me yet." The idea took root. If he could confront her directly, force her to see his side, maybe he could claw back some control. His lawyer's warnings echoed faintly, but pride drowned them out. The next morning, Maya walked toward the FBI field office in D.C. Security was tighter than usual, metal detectors humming, agents stationed at every entrance. The bureau had received threats, emails, anonymous calls, even letters, but none had shaken her. She carried herself calmly, as always, though she felt the tension in every step. Inside, Wilder pulled her aside. "Brookhaven's not cooling down. Burris is out there stirring fires. Lopez is hanging by a thread. And you? You're being asked to lead a task force that'll put a target on your back even bigger than the one you've got." Maya met his eyes. "So what's the alternative? Stay quiet? Step back?" Wilder smirked faintly. "Didn't think so, but understand this. Once you say yes, there's no undoing it." Maya exhaled. "Then I'd better mean it." In Brookhaven, Lopez returned home to find protesters outside again, this time holding his name on signs. "Stand with Lopez," they chanted. His children peeked from the window wide-eyed. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. Maybe truth had allies after all. But that night, as he walked to his car, he noticed a note tucked under the wiper. "Traitors don't last long." His blood ran cold. He pocketed the note and looked around, but the street was empty. Fear lingered like a shadow. Elsewhere, Burris's reckless plan moved forward. He tracked Maya's public schedule, noting her appearances in D.C. He told himself it wasn't about violence, it was about confrontation, about reclaiming his dignity. But deep down, he knew anger drove him more than reason. He parked near a government building, watching from across the street as Maya exited with aides and reporters. Cameras flashed, protesters cheered, opponents jeered. Burris gripped the steering wheel, every nerve on fire. "She made me the villain," he whispered. "Now she'll hear me." That evening, Maya returned to her hotel exhausted. Alicia handed her a folder. "The White House is considering endorsing the task force. This is bigger than any of us thought." Maya skimmed the pages, feeling the tide pulling her faster than she could swim. She closed the folder, staring at her reflection in the dark window. "If Burris thought handcuffs could silence me," she murmured, "he has no idea how loud this will get." On another street, Burris sat in his car, engine idling, eyes fixed on the building where Maya's light glowed faintly in the window. His grip tightened around the steering wheel. For a long time, he sat there, torn between retreat and confrontation, pride and ruin. And in that moment, Brookhaven's fracture widened. Not just a city divided, but a nation watching, waiting to see which way the story would turn. The streets of Washington bustled with their usual rhythm, horns blaring, pedestrians weaving through the morning rush. But in Maya's world, the noise felt muted. Every sound filtered through the growing storm around her name. She buttoned her blazer as she left the FBI field office, prepared for another day of briefings and meetings. Reporters surged toward her immediately, microphones thrust forward. "Agent Brooks, do you support federal oversight of all police departments? Are you considering a political career? Do you feel unsafe after Officer Burris's public comments?" Maya kept her stride steady, answering only with silence, Alicia close at her side. But she could feel the questions sticking like burrs, growing heavier with every step. Across the street, Burris waited. His car engine was off, his hat pulled low. He had tracked her schedule online, followed the live feeds. His chest burned with resentment, his thoughts circling like vultures. Every headline felt like a knife, every chant of her name a reminder that the world had chosen her story over his. "She turned me into the villain," he muttered, watching her move with calm composure. "She doesn't get to walk away clean." At that same moment, Lopez stood in the Union Hall back in Brookhaven, the results of the vote about to be read. The air was thick, dozens of officers staring ahead, waiting. The Union president cleared his throat. "The motion to remove Officer Lopez from Union protections has failed. By narrow margin." Gasps and murmurs rippled across the room. Lopez sat frozen, relief and dread battling inside him. He had survived, for now. But survival came at a cost. He was officially marked. As officers filed out, some glared openly, others muttered insults under their breath. Yet a handful gave him quick nods of support, subtle but real. Lopez knew then that cracks in the shield were spreading, even if they were small. In Washington, Maya reached the steps of her car. As Alicia opened the door, she caught a flicker of movement across the street. A man stepping off the curb, shoulders tense, eyes locked on her. Burris. Her body stiffened before her mind caught up. "Alicia," she whispered. Alicia turned, eyes widening. Security agents nearby reacted instantly, moving between Maya and the advancing figure. "Agent Brooks!" Burris shouted, voice rough with anger. Cameras turned at once, reporters sensing drama. "You ruined me! You don't know what you've done!" The crowd erupted into chaos. Protesters screamed, reporters shoved forward, security rushed to contain him. Burris fought against the agents, shouting over the noise. "You think you're a hero? You think you're justice? You're nothing without that badge." Maya stood still, her heartbeat pounding. For a moment, she wasn't an agent or a symbol. She was just a woman staring into the raw fury of a man who refused to see his own downfall. Security forced Burris back, pinning his arms, but cameras captured every second. The scene spread across networks within minutes, headlines flashing, "Disgraced officer confronts FBI agent outside Capitol." Inside the car, Alicia slammed the door shut, her face pale. "You okay?" Maya nodded slowly, though adrenaline coursed through her veins. "He's desperate. That makes him dangerous." "And the cameras ate it up," Alicia muttered. "By tonight this'll be everywhere." Maya leaned back against the seat, closing her eyes briefly. She hadn't flinched, hadn't raised her voice, hadn't moved. But she knew the confrontation would ignite the debate even further. Was she a victim or was she baiting? The court of public opinion rarely cared about nuance. Back in Brookhaven, Lopez sat at his kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. A video of Burris lunging toward Maya filled the screen, already racking up millions of views. His wife looked over his shoulder, hand covering her mouth. "He's lost it," she whispered. Lopez shook his head. He already lost it the day he snapped those cuffs. Now the world's just seeing it. He thought of Maya, steady, unshaken, even under fire. She was risking everything on a national stage, and somehow that gave him courage to face his own battles at home. That night, Burris sat in a holding cell, rage boiling under his skin. He replayed the confrontation in his head, convinced he had exposed her, convinced people would see her as manipulative. But outside those walls, the opposite unfolded. His outburst painted him as unstable, while Maya's calm demeanor drew praise. On social media, clips spread with captions, "Grace under fire," and "She didn't flinch." Support for Maya swelled. Even lawmakers who had wavered before now called for urgent reform. In her hotel room, Maya watched the coverage silently. Alicia paced behind her, phone buzzing nonstop. "This changes everything," Alicia said. "You just became untouchable. They'll push harder for you to lead that task force now." Maya muted the TV, staring at her reflection in the dark window. She hadn't wanted this, hadn't asked for it, but the confrontation had made one thing clear. She could no longer separate her badge from her voice. She whispered to herself, almost reluctantly, "So be it." As the night deepened, 3 lives sat at crossroads. Lopez, caught between truth and survival, but finding unexpected allies. Burris, trapped in the wreckage of his own pride, lashing out in futility. Maya, propelled into the national spotlight, no longer just an agent but a symbol of defiance and change. And in the spaces between them, the nation watched, argued, and chose sides. The storm had only grown louder. The morning after Burris's public outburst, the nation awoke to wall-to-wall coverage. News anchors replayed the footage of him lunging toward Maya on a loop, dissecting every frame. Commentators debated whether it was desperation, intimidation, or proof of instability. Whatever the analysis, one conclusion rang clear. Burris had crossed another line, and this time the world had seen it live. At Brookhaven Precinct, Chief Rawlings stood before a press conference podium. Jaw tight, uniform pressed sharp. Effective immediately, Officer Kenneth Burris has been placed under arrest pending charges of disorderly conduct and attempted intimidation of a federal officer. Brookhaven PD condemns his actions and reaffirms its commitment to accountability. Flashbulbs popped. Reporters shouted follow-up questions, but Rawlings stepped away without answering. Inside the department, whispers spread. Some officers muttered that Burris had been hung out to dry. Others admitted privately it was overdue. Lopez watched the broadcast from his patrol car, parked in a quiet lot. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of vindication. The man who had once towered over him, who had symbolized untouchable arrogance, was now behind bars. Yet even in that moment, Lopez knew the fight wasn't over. Burris was just one man. The system that shielded him remained. In Washington, Maya's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from colleagues, supporters, and strangers poured in. Some offered praise, others demanded she seize the moment. Alicia entered the hotel suite carrying 2 coffees and a stack of folders. "You've been officially summoned," Alicia said, dropping the folders on the table. "The Attorney General wants to meet, today." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That fast?" Alicia nodded. "The White House is circling too. Burris's stunt gave them momentum. They see you as the face of reform, whether you want it or not." Maya exhaled, rubbing her temples. "I joined the Bureau to chase criminals, Alicia, not to be a headline." "And yet here you are," Alicia replied gently. "Sometimes history doesn't wait for permission." At FBI headquarters, Deputy Director Simmons laid it out plainly. "Agent Brooks, the Department of Justice is launching a national task force on law enforcement accountability. We want you to lead it." Maya stared at him, words caught in her throat. Around the table, senior officials watched carefully, waiting for her response. Wilder sat to her left, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Why me?" Maya finally asked. "Because you lived it," Simmons said. "Because you spoke the truth when millions were watching. And because you have the credibility to make both Congress and the public listen." Wilder leaned closer. "This isn't a request, Maya. It's a moment. You can walk away, but the tide won't stop. Better to steer it than let someone else drive it into the ground." Maya swallowed hard. "If I do this, it won't just be politics, it'll be war. Against culture, against silence, against people who'll do anything to keep things the same." Simmons nodded. "We know. That's why we're asking you." Back in Brookhaven, Lopez walked into the precinct after the union vote. The halls felt colder, eyes sharper. Some officers avoided him entirely. Others whispered loudly enough for him to hear. "Traitor! Media puppet! Snitch!" He ignored the barbs, heading straight to his locker. Inside, taped to the door, was another note. "Not everyone hates you. Keep going." Lopez stared at it, throat tight. He didn't know who had left it. Maybe one of the younger recruits, maybe someone too afraid to show public support, but it reminded him he wasn't entirely alone. When Donnelly passed by, he clapped Lopez on the shoulder. "You're making enemies, kid, but you're making the right ones." That evening, Burris sat in a county jail cell, head in his hands. His lawyer Richards visited, sighing heavily. "They're stacking charges, Ken. Disorderly conduct, attempted intimidation, violation of release terms. You've made it nearly impossible to defend you." Burris glared up. "I told the truth. She baited me, turned this into a circus, and now they want me to roll over and die?" Richards shook his head. "No, Ken. They want you to face consequences, something you've avoided your whole career." Burris slammed a fist against the wall, but the sound was hollow. For the first time, he wasn't just feared. He was pitied. Later that night, Maya walked the quiet streets near her hotel. Protesters had gathered again, but this time their chants carried hope rather than anger. Candles flickered in the cool breeze. A little girl approached timidly, holding a handmade sign. "Thank you, Agent Brooks." Maya knelt to accept it, heart heavy with responsibility. The girl's mother whispered, "You showed her someone who looks like her can stand tall." Maya smiled faintly, But as she returned to her hotel, the weight of expectation pressed harder. She was no longer just an FBI agent. She was a symbol, and symbols didn't get to rest. The next morning, headlines blared. Burris charged. Brooks tapped for National Task Force. The nation had chosen its sides. Maya stood before the mirror, adjusting her blazer, her reflection steady but tired. The choice had been made for her, in some ways, but she whispered it aloud anyway, as if making it real. "I'll lead." And with those words, she stepped into a role larger than herself, one that would demand everything she had left to give. The official announcement came at noon. Cameras filled the DOJ briefing room, reporters packed shoulder to shoulder. A seal of the United States hung on the wall behind the podium, and Deputy Director Simmons stepped forward first. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we confirm the formation of the National Task Force on Law Enforcement Accountability. Its mission is clear: to investigate misconduct, recommend reforms, and restore trust between communities and those sworn to protect them." He paused, letting the flashes subside. "We are proud to announce Agent Maya Brooks will lead this task force." The room erupted, shouts of questions, a frenzy of camera shutters. Simmons raised a hand, then stepped aside as Maya walked to the podium. She stood tall, blazer pressed, hair pulled neatly back, her FBI badge glinting subtly at her waist. She gripped the sides of the podium, steadying herself against the tidal wave of expectation. "This is not about me," she began, her voice calm but firm. "It's about accountability. It's about ensuring what happened to me never happens to anyone else. This task force isn't about tearing down law enforcement. It's about building it stronger, fairer, and worthy of the trust it demands." The words echoed across networks, replayed instantly on social media. Some hailed her as a pioneer, others attacked her as a political pawn. But no one could ignore her anymore. Back in Brookhaven, Lopez watched the broadcast from his desk, flanked by silent colleagues. Some glared openly, others avoided looking at him altogether. He could feel the walls pressing tighter, the tension vibrating in the air. Later that afternoon, as he left the precinct, he noticed his car door ajar. His pulse quickened. Inside, the seats had been slashed, foam spilling like entrails. On the dashboard sat a single message scrawled in red marker, "Last warning." Lopez froze, scanning the empty lot. The message wasn't random, it was deliberate, designed to push him out or scare him silent. For a moment, fear clawed at his throat, but then he pictured Maya on the podium, unwavering under the nation's gaze. If she could face that storm, he could face this one. He locked the wrecked car, pulled out his phone, and dialed internal affairs. "It's Lopez," he said. "We've got a bigger problem." Meanwhile, Burris's case spiraled deeper. Shackled, he was escorted into a county courtroom for arraignment. The charges read aloud: disorderly conduct, intimidation of a federal officer, violation of release terms, rang like a death knell for his career. His lawyer Richards argued for leniency, but the judge cut him short. "This court has reviewed the footage of Mr. Burris's actions. Given his prior conduct and the public nature of this offense, bail is denied. He will remain in custody pending trial." Gasps rippled through the room. Burris clenched his jaw, fury radiating off him. As marshals led him away, he barked, "This isn't justice, this is a witch hunt." Cameras captured it all, cementing his downfall in the public eye. In Washington, Maya met with members of her new task force, an eclectic mix of federal agents, civil rights lawyers, former police chiefs, and community leaders. The room buzzed with tension, but also possibility. A retired chief spoke first. "Agent Brooks, you're walking a razor's edge. Law enforcement will see this as betrayal. Communities will see it as a promise. You won't please both." Maya met his gaze. "I'm not here to please anyone. I'm here to find the truth and build something better. If that makes me enemies, so be it." A civil rights lawyer across the table leaned in. "Then you'll need allies, and you have them here. Let's get to work." The meeting stretched late into the night. Maps and case files spread across the table. For the first time, Maya felt the spark of purpose outweigh the burden of symbolism. In Brookhaven, Lopez sat in his kitchen with his wife after filing the internal affairs report. The kids were asleep upstairs, their laughter still echoing faintly in his ears. His wife took his hand. "Daniel," she whispered, "how much more can you take?" He looked at her tired eyes, the worry lines etched deeper than before. "As much as it takes," he answered quietly. "If I quit now, Burris wins. The silence wins, and I can't let that be the lesson for our kids." She squeezed his hand, tears brimming. "Then promise me one thing. Promise me you'll come home safe." Lopez nodded, though the promise felt heavier than any oath he'd ever sworn. That night, Maya returned to her hotel room, exhaustion weighing on her bones. Alicia poured 2 glasses of water, setting one on the desk. "You realize Burris's meltdown just cemented your role, right?" Alicia said. "If he hadn't snapped, you wouldn't be here. Sometimes villains build their own stage." Maya gave a faint smile. "Then I guess it's my job to make sure the spotlight doesn't go to waste." She stared out the window, the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. The city hummed with possibility, but also danger. Burris's shadow still loomed, Lopez's safety hung by a thread, and the nation's eyes refused to look away. Maya whispered softly, almost to herself, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." Maya's first day as head of the task force began before sunrise. The war room in D.C. buzzed with nervous energy, papers stacked high, screens glowing with maps and case files. Representatives from across the country had flown in, civil rights lawyers in sharp suits, data analysts with laptops, even 2 sheriffs who had reluctantly agreed to participate. Maya stood at the front, hands clasped behind her back. She looked at the faces before her, skeptical, tired, hopeful. "We are not here to pick sides," she said, her voice steady. "We are here to find truth, to shine light where darkness has been allowed to thrive. Some of us wear badges, some of us don't. But today, we're one team." Her words landed, though not evenly. The retired sheriff grumbled under his breath, but the civil rights lawyer beside him nodded firmly. It was a fragile alliance, but it was real. In Brookhaven, Lopez pulled into the precinct lot in a borrowed car, his own still at the shop after the vandalism. The morning air was sharp, but the atmosphere inside was colder still. Conversation stopped when he entered. A few officers snickered, others simply stared. As he sat at his desk, an anonymous envelope slid across the surface. He opened it to find a single photo, his family taken from across the street. His chest tightened, fury and fear colliding. He shoved the photo into his pocket, breathing hard. Sergeant Donnelly leaned over, voice low. "They're trying to break you. Don't let them." Lopez met his eyes. "It's not me I'm worried about anymore." Meanwhile, Burris sat across from his lawyer in the county jail's visitation room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. His hair was unkempt, his eyes bloodshot. Richard slid a folder across the table. "The prosecution's case is airtight, Ken, but we have one card to play: public opinion. There are groups willing to paint you as the victim of political overreach. If you cooperate, they'll fund your defense. They're already reaching out to media outlets, spinning you as a martyr." Burris's lip curled. "So I become their poster boy? Let them use me like she did?" Richard sighed. "Better that than rotting in here for the next 10 years. This is survival, Ken. Take it." Burris leaned back, eyes narrowing. If he couldn't win in court, maybe he could win in chaos. In Washington, Maya's team launched their first investigation. A Midwestern police department accused of covering up repeated misconduct. The files were thick, the allegations grim. Maya flipped through page after page, her expression unreadable. "We'll start on-site interviews next week," she told the group. "But be prepared. Resistance will be fierce. These departments aren't used to outsiders asking questions." A sheriff muttered, "Especially not outsiders with cameras waiting for every answer." Maya ignored the jab. She knew resistance was part of the job. What mattered was staying steady, not giving in to the noise. Back in Brookhaven, Lopez left the precinct late that night. The parking lot was nearly empty, shadows stretching long under the flickering streetlights. As he unlocked the borrowed car, a figure stepped from the darkness. "You should have kept your mouth shut," the man hissed. Before Lopez could react, a fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling against the car. 2 more figures emerged, boots slamming into his ribs. Lopez gasped, fighting to shield himself. "Traitor," one spat. "You don't belong here." Then headlights cut across the lot, a car pulling in. The attackers scattered like shadows, leaving Lopez bruised and bleeding on the ground. Donnelly rushed out of the driver's seat, eyes wide. "Jesus, Daniel!" He knelt, helping him up. "We need to get you to a hospital." Lopez shook his head, wincing. "No hospitals, no reports. If they wanted to scare me, they failed. I'm not stopping." Donnelly stared at him, torn between admiration and fear. "You're going to get yourself killed." Lopez wiped the blood from his lip. "Better me than the truth." The next morning, Maya received the report about Lopez's assault from a trusted contact. Her jaw tightened as she read the details. She closed the file, staring out the window at the city below. Alicia entered, coffee in hand. "Bad news?" "Worse than bad," Maya said. "They're trying to silence him. Same way they tried with me." Alicia's eyes hardened. "Then we make sure his story gets louder." Meanwhile, Burris's mugshot flashed across the evening news again, but this time it was accompanied by commentary from pundits sympathetic to him. "This isn't justice," one said. "This is a man being destroyed to make a political point." Another added, "He's being scapegoated for the system's failings." In his cell, Burris smiled faintly. The cracks were forming. If he could weaponize outrage, maybe he could claw back relevance. That night, Maya stood before her task force again, laying out their strategy. Her voice carried conviction, but her mind lingered on Lopez. "This work isn't abstract," she told them. "It's personal. It's about real lives. People like Officer Lopez are paying the price for truth. We can't let that sacrifice be in vain." The room fell silent, every member leaning forward, the weight of her words pressing on them. For the first time since the handcuffs closed on her wrists, Maya felt not just the burden of survival, but the clarity of purpose. The news of Lopez's assault didn't stay quiet for long. A grainy cell phone video surfaced online. A neighbor had caught the tail end of the attack, shadows fleeing into the night while Lopez staggered against his car. The clip exploded across social media. Hashtags bearing his name trended nationwide. Local reporters swarmed Brookhaven the next morning. "Officer Lopez, are you being targeted by your own department?" one shouted as he walked into the precinct, face still bruised. He refused to answer, but the cameras captured the defiance in his eyes. Inside, Chief Rawlings summoned him. "Daniel, this circus has to stop. You're turning this department into a punching bag." Lopez stood tall despite the ache in his ribs. "With respect, Chief, I didn't make this mess. Burris did." The silence after made it worse. "I won't be part of covering it up." Rawlings exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples. "You've got guts, Lopez, but guts don't keep men alive. Be careful." Meanwhile, Maya's task force prepared for their first field mission. The team would travel to a Midwestern city with a long record of misconduct complaints buried under bureaucracy. In the war room, Maya reviewed files with her team. "We're not just investigators," she reminded them. "We're stepping into a spotlight. Every move will be scrutinized, every word recorded, but if we do this right, it could set the tone for every case to come." A young analyst asked, "And if we fail?" Maya met his gaze. "Then we make it harder for the next whistleblower. Failure isn't an option." The team nodded, the weight of her words grounding them. Burris, however, was playing his own game. From his jail cell, he gave a recorded phone interview to a sympathetic media outlet. His voice, raspy but defiant, filled the airwaves. "I'm not the monster they paint me as. I'm a man who served this city for 20 years. Now they want to destroy me for one mistake. Meanwhile, politicians and agents climb ladders off my back." The clip went viral in certain circles, fueling heated debates. Commentators clashed on primetime shows. Was Burris a symbol of systemic rot or a scapegoat sacrificed for optics? In his cell, Burris smiled thinly. The narrative was shifting, even if only by inches. In Washington, Maya watched the interview late at night, jaw tight. Alicia leaned on the table beside her. "He's clawing for relevance," Alicia said. "The worst part? It's working. People love an underdog story, even when the underdog is the villain." Maya shut the laptop. "Let him talk. The louder he shouts, the clearer the truth becomes. My focus is the task force." But deep down, she knew Burris's voice still had power to poison the waters. Back in Brookhaven, Lopez drove home cautiously, eyes scanning the mirrors. When he pulled into his driveway, he noticed a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk, neighbors holding candles, signs reading, "We stand with Lopez." His wife stepped out, children clinging to her side. The neighbors cheered softly as Lopez walked up, bruises visible but spirit unbroken. One elderly woman pressed a hand to his arm. "Don't give up, son," she said. "You're fighting for more than yourself." Lopez swallowed hard, emotion catching in his throat. For weeks he had felt isolated, abandoned inside his own department. But here, outside the blue walls, community embraced him. Maybe he wasn't fighting alone after all. The next morning, Maya and her team flew into the Midwest. The press was already waiting on the tarmac, cameras flashing. She gave no comments, only a curt nod before shepherding her team into unmarked vans. Inside the city's precinct, local officers greeted them with frosty silence. Files requested had gone missing. Meetings scheduled were delayed. The resistance was immediate, calculated. Maya gathered her team in a conference room. "They'll stonewall us. Expect it. Document everything. Every delay, every excuse. We'll build our case one brick at a time." Her calm confidence steadied the room. Even the skeptical sheriff on her task force leaned back, grudgingly impressed. That night, news channels split their coverage. Burris's defiant interview, Lopez's candlelight support, and Maya's arrival in the Midwest. The three stories collided on screen, weaving a larger narrative of accountability and resistance. In his cell, Burris grinned at the coverage, convinced the tide was turning his way. In his living room, Lopez held his children close, knowing the battle was far from over. And in a modest hotel room, Maya sat at her desk, reviewing files by lamplight, whispering to herself, "This is bigger than Brookhaven now. This is the fight of a lifetime." The precinct's conference room smelled faintly of dust and stale coffee. Maya's task force sat around a battered table piled with case folders the local department reluctantly provided. Most were thin, filled with boilerplate language. Missing complaints, unsigned reports, classic signs of a cover-up. Maya flipped through a stack, her expression calm but razor-sharp. "These files are incomplete," she said flatly. "Where are the civilian complaint logs?" A local captain shrugged. "What you see is what we've got." The retired sheriff on Maya's task force leaned forward, tapping the folder. "That's impossible. I ran a department half this size and we logged twice as many complaints in a year." The captain's jaw tightened. "Maybe our citizens don't complain as much." The room bristled. Maya closed the folder and looked him dead in the eye. "Or maybe their complaints vanish before they're filed." The silence that followed was louder than any admission. Meanwhile, in Brookhaven, Lopez entered the locker room to find his locker door bent open, his uniforms tossed in the trash. Spray-painted across the metal was a single word: rat. He stood frozen for a moment, the weight of it settling heavy in his chest. The few officers present snickered but said nothing. Donnelly appeared in the doorway, eyes dark with anger. "They're escalating," Donnelly muttered. "This isn't pranks anymore, it's war." Lopez picked up his badge from the floor, dusting it off. His ribs still ached from the assault, but his resolve only hardened. "Then I fight smarter, not louder. They want me to break. I won't give them the satisfaction." Still, as he shut the ruined locker, he couldn't shake the image of the photo of his family tucked inside his jacket. They were no longer safe, and he knew it. At the county jail, Burris prepared for his next move. His new supporters, a patchwork of activists, opportunists, and self-styled patriots, had organized a rally outside the courthouse. They carried signs declaring "Justice for Burris" and "Stop the Witch Hunt." In the visitation room, Richards warned him, "This crowd can help you or sink you, Ken. They'll paint you as a symbol of resistance, but once you're their symbol, you lose control." Burris smirked, eyes glittering with stubborn pride. "Control's already gone. If they want a symbol, I'll give them one. Let Brooks and her task force choke on the chaos." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She thinks she's untouchable because of that badge, but people like me don't disappear. We multiply." Back in the Midwest, Maya's team huddled late into the night, going over files they'd managed to copy before the precinct closed its doors. A young analyst, Jordan, frowned as he scrolled through digital scans. "Look at this," he said. "Complaint numbers jump every spring, then vanish by summer. No follow-ups, no resolutions, almost like clockwork." Maya leaned over his shoulder. "Patterns mean intent. Someone's burying them." They cross-referenced with local court dockets and discovered civilian lawsuits quietly dismissed after settlements. The picture was clear: systematic suppression. Maya exhaled, voice steady. "This is it. This is the kind of proof we need. Tomorrow, we press harder. No excuses." In Brookhaven, Lopez sat at his kitchen table long after his family went to bed. The glow of his phone lit his bruised face. Messages poured in, some supportive, others laced with venom. "Traitor. Stay strong. We're watching you." He put the phone down, staring into the dark. The fear was real, but so was the responsibility. He thought of Maya, standing in front of Congress, unshaken. He thought of the neighbors who had held candles outside his house. He whispered to himself, "You don't quit now." The next morning, Maya and her team arrived at the precinct again. Reporters were gathered outside, tipped off to the tension. The local captain met them at the door, arms crossed. "You can't just waltz in here every day and demand records," he snapped. Maya held up a federal order signed by the DOJ. "Actually, I can, and I will." The cameras caught the exchange, broadcasting it live. By noon, headlines read, "Task Force meets resistance in Midwest probe." Behind closed doors, Maya's team uncovered more files tucked away in a locked cabinet, unregistered use of force reports, bodycam footage that had never been logged. It was explosive evidence, enough to prove a systemic pattern. As Maya held one of the hidden reports in her hand, she felt the gravity of it. This wasn't just paperwork. It was the voice of people silenced for years. That evening, Burris's rally drew hundreds. Supporters waved flags, shouted slogans, and carried his name like a banner of defiance. News crews covered it from every angle. Inside his cell, Burris sat back with a satisfied grin. "They'll remember my name," he muttered. "And hers. Always together." And across the country, two stories collided. A task force digging up the truth brick by brick. A disgraced officer trying to rewrite his legacy with chaos. Caught between them were people like Lopez, living proof that the battle wasn't just in headlines, but in bruises, threats, and quiet courage. The storm wasn't slowing. It was only gathering strength. The sun had barely risen when the first leaks hit the press. An investigative journalist published excerpts of the hidden reports Maya's team uncovered. Cases of excessive force, misconduct complaints, and settlements buried under paperwork. The article spread like wildfire. By mid-morning, every major network carried the headline, "Midwest Police Department accused of systematic cover-ups." In the war room, Maya scanned the article, lips pressed into a tight line. "This wasn't supposed to go public yet," she said, looking at her task force. Jordan, the young analyst, raised his hands. "It wasn't me, I swear." Alicia frowned. "Does it matter? The story's out. The nation's watching, and the pressure just doubled." Maya exhaled, her shoulders heavy but steady. "Then we adapt. If they want sunlight, we'll give them the whole truth." In Brookhaven, Lopez entered the precinct with every eye on him. The leaked article had emboldened whispers, but not all of them were hostile. Some younger officers nodded faintly, a silent sign of respect. Still, the hostility hadn't disappeared. Midway through his shift, Lopez was ordered into the captain's office. Inside waited not just the captain, but 3 senior officers, men who had built careers protecting the old ways. "Daniel," one began, tone dripping with disdain, "you're tearing this department apart. These leaks, they're fueling the fire." Lopez crossed his arms. "I didn't leak anything." "Doesn't matter," another snapped. "The community sees you as the whistleblower. You've embarrassed us. You've made enemies." The captain leaned forward. "You've got 2 choices. Keep your head down and stop feeding this circus, or walk away before someone gets hurt." Lopez stared at them, his jaw tight. "There's a third choice. I keep doing my job and I tell the truth. If that makes me a problem, so be it." The silence that followed was electric. A room full of wolves realizing their prey had teeth. Meanwhile, Burris's rally outside the courthouse swelled to chaos. Supporters carried signs reading "Stand with Burris" and "Stop the FBI witch hunt." Loudspeakers blared speeches painting him as a victim of political persecution. But the crowd wasn't just supporters. Counter-protesters had gathered too, holding signs with Maya's face and slogans like "Justice for All." Police formed a shaky line between the groups. Inside his cell, Burris watched the live feed on a small TV bolted to the wall. His grin widened as chants of his name echoed. "They still need me," he muttered. "I'm not finished." His lawyer Richards, visiting later that day, shook his head. "Ken, this is dangerous. The more chaotic it gets, the less control you have." Burris leaned forward, eyes burning. "Control is overrated. Fear, that's what works, and they're afraid of me again." Back in the Midwest, Maya's task force prepared for a press briefing. Reporters crammed into the hall, cameras trained on the podium. The local police brass looked grim, forced to stand beside her as the leaks spiraled into national outrage. Maya spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "The documents obtained by our task force confirm a troubling pattern of misconduct and cover-ups. This is not speculation, it is fact. The American people deserve transparency, and we will deliver it." Questions flew instantly. "Agent Brooks, do you believe this corruption extends to other states? Are you calling for federal oversight of all police departments? Is Officer Burris's case connected to these findings?" Maya answered only the first. "Wherever corruption hides, we will look." This task force was created for that purpose, and we won't stop. The cameras flashed furiously. Across the country, households tuned in, some nodding with pride, others seething with anger. In Brookhaven that night, Lopez walked to his car after a long shift. The lot was nearly empty, but he noticed a group of officers lingering near the exit. Their voices carried, low and menacing. "Should have quit while he had the chance," one muttered. Another laughed. "We'll make sure he learns." Lopez tightened his grip on his keys, every nerve on edge. He reached his car quickly, locking the doors as he slid inside. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is your last warning." His chest pounded, but instead of fear, a strange calm settled over him. They wanted him broken. Instead, they had given him clarity. He drove home, jaw set, ready for whatever came next. In Washington, Maya sat with Alicia in their hotel room, the TV replaying her press briefing. Alicia shook her head. "You realize Burris's people are going to spin this into proof of some federal conspiracy, right?" Maya sipped her coffee, eyes on the screen. "Let them. The truth doesn't need spin, it needs persistence, and that's what we'll give." Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lopez. Just 4 words. "They won't stop me." Maya smiled faintly, replying, "Then neither will we." The storm had reached a breaking point, Maya exposing corruption on a national stage. Lopez standing firm inside a hostile department. Burris fueling chaos from his cell, feeding on fear. 3 lives intertwined, 3 fronts of the same war. And beyond them, a nation holding its breath, waiting to see which side of history would prevail. The next morning, the task force room buzzed with tense urgency. Jordan had spent the night combing through a batch of mislabeled digital files recovered from the locked cabinet. His eyes were bloodshot, but his excitement cut through the exhaustion. "Agent Brooks, you need to see this." He pressed play on a screen. Grainy bodycam footage flickered to life, an officer stopping a black teenager for loitering. Within minutes, the encounter turned violent. The officer shoved the boy against a wall, then slammed him to the ground, ignoring his cries. The footage cut abruptly, time-stamped but never filed. Maya's jaw tightened. "How long has this been buried?" Jordan scrolled. "Over 3 years. And there's more. Multiple incidents, same officer, same pattern. None of them ever reached internal affairs." The room fell silent as the weight of the evidence sank in. Maya straightened. "This changes everything. We're not dealing with negligence, we're dealing with deliberate obstruction." Back in Brookhaven, Lopez sat in his patrol car outside the courthouse, watching the crowd gather for Burris's next hearing. The opposing sides were louder now. Burris's supporters chanting angrily, counter-protesters demanding justice. His radio crackled. "Unit 24, report to precinct immediately." Lopez frowned. "Copy that." When he arrived, the halls were eerily quiet. A group of officers waited in the locker room, their faces hard. "You've brought nothing but shame here," one spat. "Every time you open your mouth, the whole department looks weak." Lopez kept his hands visible, his pulse racing. "I'm doing my job." Another officer stepped closer, fists clenched. "Your job is to protect your brothers, not drag us through the mud." Before a blow could land, Donnelly stormed in. "That's enough. You think roughing him up will fix anything? You'll bury yourselves with him." The group dispersed reluctantly, muttering threats. Lopez exhaled, his body trembling from adrenaline. Donnelly looked at him, eyes sharp. "They're not going to stop. You need allies, Daniel. Find them fast." At the county jail, Burris prepared for his court appearance. The guards shackled him, leading him through narrow corridors lined with press. Outside, chants echoed, "Free Burris" and "Justice for Brooks," colliding in a cacophony. Inside the courtroom, the judge's voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. Burris, due to overwhelming evidence and risk of obstruction, your trial will proceed without bail." Burris sneered, turning toward the gallery. "This isn't a trial, it's a lynching in a suit and tie." His words ignited his supporters outside, their chants growing angrier, louder, spilling into confrontation with counter-protesters. Police lines strained to contain the clash. Meanwhile, Maya's task force met behind closed doors with DOJ officials. The footage Jordan uncovered played on a large screen, every second more damning than the last. One official leaned forward, pale. "If this goes public, the department is finished. And if there's one like this, there are others." Maya crossed her arms. "Which is exactly why we can't bury it. This is the proof communities have been denied for years." The official hesitated. "It'll cause chaos." Maya's voice sharpened. Chaos is already here. This is truth. Her team watched her, nodding slowly. She had become more than their leader. She was their anchor. That evening, Lopez drove home under a heavy sky, clouds bruised with storm. He parked in his driveway, shoulders aching, when headlights flared behind him. A dark SUV blocked his exit. Two masked men stepped out, one holding a bat. Lopez's heart pounded. He grabbed his radio. "Officer under—" The SUV peeled away before he could finish, tires screeching into the night. A warning. Not an attack. Not yet. He stood in his driveway, shaken but resolute. They wanted him silent. Instead, they had lit the fire hotter. In Washington, Maya sat in her hotel room, watching coverage of Burris's chaotic court appearance. Protesters clashed in the streets, smoke rising from overturned trash bins. Alicia entered, tossing her a file. "The footage leak is inevitable. We can either control it or watch it spin out of our hands." Maya looked at the file, then at Alicia. "We control it. Tomorrow, we release everything." Alicia's brows lifted. "Everything?" "Everything," Maya said firmly. "No more half-truths. No more shadows." The next day, networks broke the story wide open. Hidden body cam footage proves systematic police abuse. The video played on endless loops, sparking outrage, marches, and demands for accountability. Burris's supporters shouted louder, painting the release as part of a vendetta. His face filled their posters, his voice echoed in their chants. But for every voice defending him, 10 more demanded justice. Communities across the country held vigils, chanting Maya's name alongside Lopez's. And in 3 separate corners of the nation, 3 players braced for what came next. Maya, ready to unleash the truth no matter the cost. Lopez, refusing to back down despite threats at every turn. Burris, feeding on chaos, hoping it would carry him back to relevance. The tide had turned, but the storm had only begun. By dawn, the leaked footage had traveled beyond newsrooms and smartphones. It was projected onto courthouse walls, played through megaphones at marches, shared by millions across social media. Every corner of the country buzzed with outrage. In Los Angeles, protesters filled the streets chanting, "No more cover-ups." In Chicago, vigils burned late into the night, candles flickering beneath posters of victims' faces. Even in small towns, people gathered in front of police stations, demanding accountability. Maya watched the scenes on a hotel television in Washington, her heart heavy but steady. Alicia sat across from her, scrolling through live feeds. "You've lit a fire," she said quietly, "and now the whole country's burning." Maya didn't flinch. The fire was already there. We just stopped letting them hide it. In Brookhaven, Lopez woke to pounding on his front door. His wife rushed to the hallway, fear etched into her face. He opened the door cautiously to find 2 FBI agents. "Officer Lopez?" one asked. "Yes." "We've been assigned to provide protection for your family. After last night's threats, your safety is a priority." Lopez's jaw tightened. He hated needing protection, hated what it meant for his kids. But as he looked at his wife's worried eyes, he nodded. "Thank you." Later that day, as he drove to the precinct under escort, he noticed something strange. Along the route, civilians waved. Some clapped. Others held signs reading, "We stand with Lopez." For weeks, he'd been treated as a traitor. Now the public was shifting. The tide was carrying him with it. Meanwhile, Burris sat in his jail cell, fuming as news anchors dissected the footage and connected it to his own misconduct. His lawyer Richards tried to calm him. "Ken, listen. You still have supporters. But the narrative is changing. The more this spreads, the harder it'll be to sell your martyr act." Burris slammed his fists on the metal table. "Then we go louder. We double down. If they want to make me the face of corruption, I'll make myself the face of defiance." Richards shook his head, exhausted. "You're not helping yourself." Burris leaned in, eyes blazing. "This isn't about helping myself. This is about making sure Maya Brooks goes down with me." That afternoon, Maya received an urgent call. The House Judiciary Committee had requested her testimony. She would appear before Congress within the week. Alicia frowned. "They'll grill you. Some will praise you. Others will tear you apart. Are you ready for that?" Maya set her jaw. "I've been ready since the day Burris put handcuffs on me." The news broke within hours. Agent Maya Brooks to testify before Congress on police accountability. The headlines exploded across networks, fueling even more anticipation. At the Brookhaven precinct, Lopez faced renewed hostility. Officers whispered louder now, some spitting slurs under their breath. But others, the younger ones, the ones who had seen the footage and couldn't deny it, began to shift uneasily. One rookie approached him quietly. "Sir, I just wanted to say, I believe you. My brother was roughed up last year, and the complaint vanished. I didn't know what to think until now." Lopez nodded, grateful but cautious. "Then remember this moment. Do better than the ones before you." The rookie's eyes hardened with resolve. "Yes, sir." It wasn't much, but it was a spark, and sparks spread. Outside Burris's next hearing, tensions boiled over. His supporters clashed violently with counter-protesters, fists flying, flags torn from hands. Riot police intervened, but not before windows shattered and sirens filled the air. Inside, Burris smirked as the chaos reached his ears. "Perfect," he muttered. "Let them tear each other apart." But what he didn't realize was that the violence only strengthened Maya's cause. Across the nation, images of bloodied protesters fueled calls for reform even louder. That night, Maya met with her task force one last time before preparing for Congress. The footage spread across the table reminded her of the stakes. "We've uncovered proof," she told them, "but proof isn't enough. We have to make the country listen. My testimony won't just be about documents, it'll be about people. Victims silenced, officers punished for telling the truth, communities living in fear." Her voice didn't waver. "This isn't my fight alone. It's ours. And it's only just beginning." Her team leaned in, unified despite their differences. For once, the weight of the nation's expectations didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a weapon in her hands. In Brookhaven, Lopez tucked his children into bed, FBI agents stationed outside the house. His daughter whispered, "Daddy, are the bad guys gone now?" Lopez kissed her forehead. "Not yet, but they will be, I promise." And though the fear still lingered in his chest, for the first time in weeks, hope felt stronger. In 3 corners of America, the storm raged. Maya preparing to face Congress with the truth. Lopez finding courage in his community despite threats. Burris fueling chaos, blind to the fact that it might consume him too. The nation wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting for justice or for collapse. And in that fragile silence, history hung in the balance. The Capitol buzzed with anticipation as Maya Brooks entered the grand chamber of the House Judiciary Committee. The room was packed. Lawmakers, reporters, cameras perched like hawks. Every eye followed her as she took her seat at the witness table. She adjusted the microphone, back straight, hands steady. Alicia sat behind her in the gallery, a silent pillar of support. The chairman's gavel struck. "This hearing will come to order. Today we address systemic police misconduct and the work of Agent Maya Brooks's task force." The questioning began. Congresswoman Diaz leaned forward first. "Agent Brooks, you've uncovered damning evidence of corruption. What does this mean for our justice system?" Maya spoke clearly, every word deliberate. "It means accountability has been neglected for too long. Communities have lived in fear. Officers like Daniel Lopez have faced retaliation for telling the truth, and complaints have been buried. My task force exists because silence failed." Applause rippled through the gallery, though the gavel quickly restored order. Meanwhile, in Brookhaven, Lopez sat in his squad car listening to the hearing live on the radio. Each word felt like a lifeline, tethering him to something bigger than his own bruises and battles. But as he stepped out of the car, a senior officer blocked his path. "You're done here, Lopez." Lopez squared his shoulders. "I'm still on duty." The officer sneered, shoving a resignation letter into his chest. "Sign it or things get worse, for you and your family." Lopez stared at the paper, fury boiling inside. He tore it in half. "Tell whoever sent you I don't scare easy." The officer's smirk faltered. For the first time, Lopez saw fear in their eyes. Back in the Capitol, the tone shifted. Congressman Holloway, known for his hostility to reform, leaned forward. "Agent Brooks, isn't it true your work is politically motivated? That you've painted good officers with a broad brush for your own career?" Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed in. Maya met his gaze unflinchingly. "With respect, Congressman, my career was nearly destroyed when a corrupt officer put me in handcuffs for doing nothing but existing. I don't seek power, I seek truth. And truth has no political party." The room erupted again, applause and jeers clashing, the chairman's gavel hammering for order. In his jail cell, Burris watched the hearing live on TV, teeth grinding. Every time Maya's name was mentioned, Every time applause filled the chamber, his rage deepened. Richards warned him, "Ken, you can't fight this anymore. The evidence is overwhelming." But Burris slammed his fist on the table. "If I go down, she goes with me. I still have friends on the outside. This isn't over." He scribbled a note, passing it discreetly to a guard he knew still owed him favors. Back in Washington, Maya faced her final question from the committee. "Agent Brooks, what do you say to the American people who are watching right now, wondering if change is even possible?" She looked directly at the cameras, voice steady but burning with conviction. "I say this. Change is not only possible, it is necessary. We've seen the pain. We've buried the evidence. We've silenced the truth. That ends now. We don't heal by hiding wounds. We heal by exposing them and demanding accountability. And I promise, as long as I wear this badge, I will not stop." The room exploded in thunderous applause, cameras flashing like lightning. Across the nation, living rooms, phones, and public squares lit up with her words. That evening, Lopez returned home to find his neighborhood gathered again. Candles, signs, neighbors cheering his name. His children ran into his arms, their faces beaming with pride. "Daddy," his son whispered, "everyone says you're a hero." Lopez hugged him tightly, tears stinging his eyes. "I'm just telling the truth, son. That's all." And in the shadows of the jail, Burris sat on his cot, the noise of the protests outside echoing faintly through barred windows. His smile was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow glare. "They think this is the end," he muttered, "but wars don't end with hearings." Yet for the first time in weeks, across the fractured nation, a sense of hope lingered. Maya stood tall in the Capitol, her voice a rallying cry for millions. Lopez defied intimidation, his community rising around him. Burris, stripped of power, clung to chaos as his last weapon. The storm was still raging, but for the first time, light was breaking through the clouds.